Hey everybody, I'm Christy and I am so excited today to welcome Cat Scully and her debut novel, Jennifer Strange, out into the world. So yay, welcome to the world, Jennifer Strange. And Cat, we are so excited that you're here. Anything you want to say to start us off?
I am so excited to be here with so many of the women that inspired me, that helped me along my journey, that were really there for me. And I am just so honored that Hillary, Amy, and Jennifer are joining me today to celebrate a book that's been 10 years in the making. And thank you to everybody tuning in today to celebrate my book launch despite the coronavirus. I wanted to do something like this in person with these same ladies, but we moved it online. We're going to have fun today. We're going to have a chat. We're going to have a giveaway at the end, so stick around. And I will let everybody introduce themselves. Thank you so much for being here, everybody.
Yeah, well, I have a little blurb to start us off. So if you want, we can start that way. I want to introduce you first, Kat. You're the author and the illustrator. Like that's the best part. Yeah. It's not just a book, but it's also awesome illustrations inside of the young adult horror series Jennifer Strange. Not just one book, but more to come, which is even more great. And you not only write and draw, but you're also a map illustrator for so many popular books. And you work in video game development for Deep End Games, which is just like, you just have so many things. But the one thing I want everybody to know about you is that you have the cutest cat that will eat your soul named Pumpkin. So if you have not met Pumpkin yet, I highly recommend going and finding some pictures of this feline because so cute, but like the worst resting bitch face ever. Worst best, maybe? I don't know. So thanks for being here with us. I'm just going to go around and just say hi to everybody. So let us know who you are when we start. Hillary Monahan is the author of several YA and adult horror and fantasy and contemporary novels, including Mary the Summoning, The Hollow Girl, and Snake Eyes. She recently published a short story, Red, which is a modern take on Edgar Allan Poe's The Mask of the Red Death, which if you like a tale about smashing the patriarchy, you want this one in His Hideous Heart. So welcome, Hillary, to us today. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
I'm happy for Kat.
I'm so happy.
And her murder cat. Kat and her murder cat.
It's true. I hope Pumpkin makes an appearance just so we could see her pretty little face in our screen today.
Pretty dumb face.
Amy Lukavics loves terrifying YA audience with novels titled The Feeding, The Women in the Walls, The Ravenous, and more. Amy describes herself as being raised on goosebumps and scary stories to tell in the dark, so it makes perfect sense that she would have a tale in the upcoming middle grade anthology, Don't Turn Out the Lights. I'm so excited, Amy. So welcome here with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited for Kat. Like she said, this book has been such a long time in the making, and to finally see it in its final ultimate form was just like the greatest thing ever.
I feel like ultimate form is like the best way to describe Jennifer Strange at the end. So
yes.
When I get pages in mind from Amazon, I will totally back this play, but we're going to march in the Citadel for her.
Oh my gosh.
For real.
I would love that. Hopefully that would help them.
Bring it all down. It needs to happen. Take pictures when it does. So every time somebody posted about today's launch, there was some commenter that shared that Jennifer McMahon's books were the scariest thing that they ever read. So that's the first thing you need to know is that every time somebody was saying that they're the scariest thing that they ever read. Some of these novels include The Winter People, The Night Sister, and The Invited. So welcome, Jennifer, to today. And thanks for being the scariest of all.
Wow. I feel no pressure or anything. Wow. I'm just so thrilled to be here, and I'm so excited for Kat. And I love Jennifer Strange so much. And I remember when I first met Kat, she was telling me about Jennifer and showing me some of those drawings. And I was just completely sucked in immediately. And now that it's out in the world, I'm so excited that it's being shared with everyone. Wonderful.
Well, speaking of drawings, Kat mentioned that we have an amazing giveaway, and so I'd love for Kat to share what that is. At the end of the broadcast today, or towards the end, I'm going to ask for questions in the comment box, and then somebody who asks the question is going to be the winner of the giveaway. So, Kat, share with us those terrifying drawings and all the other goodies that we're giving away today.
Oh my gosh. So it's a lot. I got pretty much everything together for this giveaway for the people who are tuning in. So we've got the 3 ghosts. Oop, here we go. The Poltergeist, the Wraith, and the Banshee. I've got the set from Fan Service Nails, the lip gloss, the Banish and Summoning nail polish, the Magnolia scented perfume. I've got Marcus's Pendulum, which is gold and black, just like the book. It's based off of this design. Geekify's enamel pin and patch that I had designed. Oop, it's upside down. But yeah, these 2. I've got the 2 tarot cards I made. They're from the book. They have As Above, So Below in the back, and they're Jennifer and Liz on the front. And I've got A Stranger Dream. Carly designed these incredible bookmarks. You can see A Stranger Dream in the back. She does amazing horror bookmarks. And she did one of Jennifer and Liz, and it looks so good. And I've got Jacob's Journal, which this was a design that inspired me of what it actually looks like in the book. So I will send one lucky person all of that.
Wow.
Kat, did you draw the tarot cards as well?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. You're amazing.
I can change my drawing style. It's a really weird thing to be able to do, but I can do it. I can mimic other people's drawing styles. I had to work in animation for a long time. I did a lot of commercials for Cartoon Network, so I had to be able to like draw Adventure Time characters, draw and just change what I can do. So it depends on what I'm drawing, but it can look very different each time I do. So yeah, that's why the inside art looks different than the cover. It looks different from these cards. But yeah, I did this in Procreate.
Those are so cool.
Yeah, for real. It's amazing.
I want you to do a whole deck now.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, just
cool.
saying, I'd buy it.
I want to do a dark zodiac, like 13 ghosts with all my ghosts. I'm extremely excited about the ones that are in book 2 because one of them is the eyes.
Nice.
It's going to have some body horror. I'm very excited.
Ooh, my favorite.
It's fine. We won't sleep after we read it. Totally fine.
Who needs
Totally
sleep?
fine. Exactly. So let's have everybody introduce your recent or upcoming stories, and you can tell us what the title is and one horror or suspense trope that your characters would balk at, that they would be like, no, this is definitely not working for me. Just to introduce who that they are. And we'll start with Kat, and then I'll call out people. That way we don't all talk over each other. So Kat, tell us a little bit about Jennifer Strange and one horror suspense trope that Jennifer would be like, no.
So Jennifer Strange is this trilogy of books about a girl who has the ability to give ghosts and demons a body with the touch of her hand. But since demons can only cross over instead of apparitions, but by possessing someone, if she touches a host with a demon inside them, it rips out of their body. So it's a messy power to have. She's been estranged from her sister ever since their mother passed away, and she's now been dropped on her doorstep, like her older sister's doorstep, while her dad's like, I gotta go figure out a stronger relic to help you contain your powers and keep these ghosts away from you. I gotta go find it. You have to stay with your sister for 3 days. I'll be back. Bye. And he gives her mother's necklace, like temporarily to protect herself. But of course it doesn't work, and she gets attacked immediately. And so basically Jennifer and Liz have to go around Savannah fighting ghosts coming out of the woodwork, attacking them while they're trying to rebond as sisters. So it's, to me, the center of this is all about family. I think that one trope that Jennifer would balk at would be probably like having the final girl trope. Like Jennifer tends to be not like the strong Buffy type. I wanted to show somebody who was that stage of Buffy where she's just in high school. She's a cheerleader. She doesn't know what she's doing as a vampire slayer, and she's learning how to do it. But I think usually like girl characters that are in books that are like stumbling through, they either end up as that final girl or they end up as like somebody meeker or killed off. And I don't want either of those things. I want to show that like she's going to come into her strength, which will be really fun to show. So that's what I think.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Jennifer.
Yes, my latest book was The Invited, and it is about a couple who moves from their safe little house in suburban Connecticut and to build a house of their dreams in the woods of Vermont. And soon after getting there, they start to learn that the land that they've moved to, there's weird stuff going on, and they're going to build this house, and they don't really know anything about building, really, and they're kind of in over their heads. And they're Helen and Nate, and Helen's a historian, and Helen becomes obsessed with the legend of this woman who lived on their land years ago, Hattie Breckenridge, who died in a horrible way and was accused of witchcraft. And the deeper Helen dives into the story, and the work keeps going on their house. And as they're working on their house, Helen is guided to incorporate these objects into the house that seem to have a meaning and tell a story. And Helen begins to realize that both Hattie and the objects seem to be guiding her and have something in mind for her, a plan. And she begins to wonder if maybe she and Nate are in danger. Tropes. Yeah, I think that she would balk against the whole like female in distress trope. One thing that I played with in the book was I wanted to write a haunted house story, right? But I thought, how can I do it differently? And I thought, there's so many stories about people moving into a haunted house. What would happen if I wrote a book about a couple who builds a haunted house? And that totally intrigued me. And as I started getting caught up in it, I was like, well, how do you build a haunted house? And I had no idea. And I thought, well, they could do it on haunted land. Maybe. What if they incorporated haunted objects? And then that got me excited, because what would the objects be, and what do the objects want, and where do they come from? And I had no idea, and I had to write the book to find out. And I was finding out right along with Helen and Nate.
Sounds really fun and terrifying. So maybe the commenters were right. Hillary.
Hi, I'm turning in the first pass edits on my next novel next month to Random House. As of right now, the book is called The Strange Matter of Miss Havisham. It probably will change because I'm terrible at titles, and they hated it. And I understand. But basically, it's a YA horror about how Miss Havisham got to be Miss Havisham in Great Expectations. And basically, the long and short of it was, there's nothing super redeemable about Miss Havisham as a character in the Dickens lore, as far as she's not supposed to be really sympathetic until maybe like 3 sentences at the end where she's dying. So I wanted to show how a typical-ish girl could end up being that kind of a nightmare, and the glass sandwiches that resulted in that along the way. That's a hint. But basically, if I had to say what trope would we push back against, it'd be fridge your gays, because the narrator of the book is very gay. And basically, I looked at Crimson Peak, which is like one of my top 5 favorite movies ever. And I'm like, I want to write a gothic horror, and I'm going to make a gothic horror about gay Miss Havisham. And that's, yeah, I'm fond of it. It's a terrible title, I know, but that won't be the title on the book. But I did see the cover recently, and it had broken doll parts on it, so I was totally in. I'm like, I'm in. I like this book. It's cool. Yeah, I know, right? Like, just smash a doll, and I'm all sad. Low hanging fruit for happiness.
Yeah.
Hillary, when does that debut?
I believe it's September of 2021, so it'll be out next year. That's my next one.
Exciting.
That's very awesome.
Thank you.
Amy.
Hi. First of all, Hillary, I don't think that title sucks at all. I think it's very dark and creepy, and I like it. So whatever.
I wanted it to be, gothic-y and stuff, and like, I'm like, this is the best I've got. It might be something like Havisham's Dark Heart or something like that. I don't know.
It's very atmospheric.
Yeah, thank you.
My most recent novel is Nightingale, and it takes place in the 50s, and it features a girl named June Hardy, who wakes up one day and feels as though her parents have been replaced by duplicates. She is therefore institutionalized against her will, and ends up kind of figuring out something's not right at the hospital, and starting to wonder if certain monstrous activity at the hospital may be linked to obsessive dreams that she has had about being abducted by aliens as a child. Like Hillary, I think my answer for which trope would June scoff at would be the bury your gays. June is bisexual, and not to spoil anything, but she's quite literally faced with this trope and ends up rejecting it and changing it by force.
Love it. Love it. Well, you all kind of talked a little bit about this, but let's talk about female characters in horror and suspense, since most of your books are centered around female characters, and many of them focus on the injustices that women face in the world. What femme characters or authors in the past have inspired your writing? And I'll ask further questions beyond that, but let's start there. And Kat, you can answer first, and then anybody jump in after.
I'm thinking, because honestly, I was just thinking most of the people on this call with me have written female characters that have inspired me. So I'm trying to think can we come back to me? Because I'm going to think for a second about
I will go, because I'm like, I love Shirley Jackson.
Oh, that was mine.
Yeah,
mine too. That's why I wanted to go first. I was like, I know we're all thinking Shirley Jackson right now.
Yes.
There's so many female suspense authors that inspire me. Shirley Jackson, Stephanie Keene, Courtney Summers, Jennifer McMahon is hugely inspirational to me. It's the perfect kind of just feminist horror that I could not get enough of. And lately, since I ever read Her Body and Other Parties, I've been super into Carmen Maria Machado. It's just like to die for, honestly.
I'm going to go back to Mary Shelley, who there was a bunch of guys in a room and they were like, hey, we're going to have a contest to write the creepiest story ever. And she was like this nothing of a girl. Like she was just a very young woman and she just blew them the fuck out of the water. So, oh God, there it was. I knew it was going to happen. She blew them out of the water. And just completely she went out and she started sci-fi. When I was 20, I was at a Denny's at 2:30 in the morning wondering where I was, so I look at her. But I mean, if you're looking at modern masters, Alyssa Wong writes some of the best short stories, period, of any genre right now. And she's incredibly creepy. Carmen's fantastic. Sylvia Moreno Garcia is just unbelievable and blowing my doors off. Like every time I look at her words, I'm like, wow, mine are bad, which is not necessarily true, but I'm like, hey, good job. I love Mira Grant, aka Shauna McGuire, who's become a friend of mine. I'm very lucky in that regard. She's Roma, and I mean, Shirley was my original answer as well, because I don't think without her I'd be doing what I'm doing. So
same.
Yeah, I was going to say Shirley, and that's who I go back to again and again. And I reread all the time. I find myself, if I'm stuck in a rut, I'll pick up Shirley Jackson and go back to her and reread. And I'm so torn, though. I don't know if my favorite book is Hill House or We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I think it might be We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Oh my God, it's so good. Those characters and just the development. And she does atmosphere and the sense of otherness like no one else. And I think that's what sucks me in so much to her work, is the way that she plays with
build is
outsiders and otherness and the slow build and just the atmosphere. Everything is so saturated with atmosphere. And I'm in Vermont. I'm in Shirley Jackson country. She was living and writing in Bennington, which is not all that far from me. And, I can drive down to Bennington and look around and see the little town square and think that's where the lottery took place. And,
oh my gosh.
Cool. It's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
Cool. Amy and Hillary, do you have favorites? Since Jennifer shared her favorite.
I mean,
it would be between the same two. Same. Yeah, I think Hill House. I actually saw that movie starring Owen Wilson, The Haunting of Hill House, or what's it called? Yeah, I think it's just called The Haunting. Yeah, I saw that when I was very young, and so by the time I read the book when I was a little older, I thought I knew how it went because of that movie. And then the book just turned out so much better. I could not even handle it. Specifically, the end. The very ending is so clinically told, I guess you could describe it. It's very straightforward, and it's not Michael Bay explosion style in your face. Something happens, it's described, and you're just left with this cold, chilled feeling.
Emptiness. Yeah.
Every
like,
time that you
awesome.
pick up that book and the atmosphere gets into you, it really, like, not to be cheesy, but it like feels like cold and creepy all the time. And We Have Always Lived in the Castle had lines like that too, but I think ultimately I would lean Hill House or like The Lottery, honestly.
The Lottery,
a lot
was
of
my
her
gateway
short
drug.
stories are so just like weird, and you're not quite sure what to make of them at the end, and then you just cannot stop thinking about them, and I love it.
Yeah. The Lottery was the first thing I read, and I think I was in like 7th or 8th grade, and I just remember being frozen because I had never read anything like that before, and I was like, there are stories like this in the world? This is the most exciting, thrilling, unsettling thing, and I want more.
Yes.
Give me more. It was great.
Kat, do you want to share? Have you come up with something in your brain?
Well, honestly, I was a bit shy to say this before, but part of the reason I wanted these 3 ladies to join me is because you all are the reason I'm doing this. Like, your books are the ones that inspired me. Like, Hillary has taught me to be brave with my voice. Her voice is so powerful. I aspire to do what she's doing with queer writing, with atmosphere, with her characters, how like visceral she gets. And I want to be as gross. Like, I want to do that. I love Hillary's work. And Amy, oh my God, Amy, like, she was my gateway drug into YA horror. Like, I read Daughters and the Devils, and I have shoved it at literally everyone I've ever met, including Jennifer McMahon. I was like, Jennifer, read this book. And I read it on audiobook, and I didn't sleep all night because I couldn't stop reading Amy's book. And I'm like, I would love to write the deep, intrinsic world that Amy creates in the mind of her teenage characters. I just love them so much. And Jennifer, like, your prose just slays me. Like, I want to write as beautifully as you do. I'm so excited because I have this adult idea that won't leave me alone. And I just feel like I'm going to go study Jennifer's books because I love them so much. So this is part of why I wanted you all here with me today. Each one of you was part of my path, both because you were my friend and you helped me, but also because your work made me go, I can do this too. So
thank you. I think
that's
Amy's
my
grosser
answer.
than I am, but that's because I read The Ravenous.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I was fortunate enough to have an editor that just only encouraged that, never once was like too far, too much. And I do feel like every other young adult horror editor out there probably would have tried to tone that down a little bit. So you can thank T.S. Ferguson for that aspect, but that was so sweet of you, Kat. Thank you.
I love it. I love that you brought together the people that inspire you. I think that's what makes this panel special. And thinking about who you hope find your stories, think who would that be, and what do you hope that they take away from them? I don't know what Shirley Jackson was thinking about, her stories and who she hoped would find them, but I imagine she'd hope all of you would find them. So who do you hope finds your stories, and what do you hope they will take away?
That's such a great question.
I kind of write for 13-year-old me is the best way for me to describe it, because 13-year-old me had the flashlight and was reading Stephen King in my farmhouse that was built in 1700 with the creeks and the dirt floor, and the place is a nightmare. I post pictures of it every once in a while, but I write for that kid that went from Shirley Jackson as prescribed reading in school to picking up Anne Rice. So that messed me up pretty good. But my point is that at that age, I write a lot of YA, but I write a lot of YA not because I'm trying to PG-13 my horror, but because I know what I could handle at 13 and what I wanted at 13. So I try to write toward the kid that I was that didn't want to be talked down to. Because if I want middle grade, I can go get middle grade. And there is some fantastic middle grade horror out there right now. Like, it's rocking the socks in middle grade right now, by Ghost Squad, Clarabelle Ortega. But I know that sounds weird, but I look at it and I look back at what I wanted to read between 13 and 16 that I had a hard time finding female creatives for. Because while I love King, everybody loves grandpa horror. I wanted more Anne Rice. I wanted more of that. So I think for me, the answer is I write basically for kid me, who could handle the adult content, But at least if it's packaged as YA, some parent's not going to automatically flush the opportunity for that kid to read a scary book down the toilet. You know, I mean, my first horror was distributed through Disney, you know, like, so, but I didn't dumb my horror down or diminish or talk down to. So I guess, yeah, I write for kid me who wanted more.
I can relate to that. I feel like if I had to answer who I think I write for, it would probably be for any girl who has ever felt like she was a freak or a weirdo. Middle school was the worst. I mean, I'm sure it's like that for a lot of people. I hated it, and it was very isolating feeling for me. And then I very vividly remember going from middle school to high school, and for the first time got exposed to like other people that were more like me. Like the freaks banded together in high school, and it felt so good to know people that I could be myself around. And I was a bookworm in high school, all through my childhood, but I would have such appreciation for books that talked about really dark trains of thought that are usually like encouraged against because they're too dark. You know, don't dwell on that. Why would you think about that? But when I read fiction that like kind of shines a light on those dark corners of the human mind, I feel less alone and validated in a way. So, I mean, that would probably be my ultimate goal with writing, is to make other weirdos feel like they found another weirdo, you know, that knows how they feel about X, Y, or Z.
Oh my gosh, I love those answers, you guys. Those are so perfect. When I sit down to write, I'm wanting to write the book that I would most want to read, and I'm hoping that other people might want that too. The thing that gets me most excited is when I'm reaching an audience of people who come to me and email me, and I meet at events, women in book clubs and things, and they come and they say, ooh, you know, I don't really do scary books, and I would never read horror, and that, you know, scary things, ghosts, I would never read a ghost story, but I loved your book, and give me more, you know, and then they want other ideas of things that are like mine. So I consider my books like a gateway drug, you know.
They are. I could see that for sure.
I've wrecked you to my mom, by the way. I've wrecked you to my, I directly invited to my mom, and I would say that's exactly why. It's a great, because it's
like literary, yeah.
But it's also psychological suspense, and I think a lot of people mentally need to be able to categorize their fiction as psychological suspense versus horror, because horror is feeding teenagers to wood chippers, but psychological suspense is adult. And once they can categorize Jennifer's stuff as straddling that line very, very neatly, and
and I just love that, you know, it makes them want more. You know, they get the thrill of being afraid of what's in their closet, and they had kind of forgotten that, and they're like, oh, I kind of like reading creepy stories. What else can I read that's like this? So that's wonderful.
Kat, who do you write for?
So I definitely write for younger me, but it's for like a very specific reason with Jennifer Strange. I think it's a different reason with each book, but for this one, I wanted to write about younger YA because when I was in the 9th grade, I got plucked out of a large, huge high school, like 900 freshmen alone, and put in a small school that was math science based, and we all wore uniforms, and it was really a strange, completely different world to me. And I wanted to write about this period of my life, which was one of the roughest in my life. And I was wrestling with being young and queer and coming into that identity, and what does that mean? And I was very shy. Like most of you know, I'm very loud. I will walk up to anybody and talk to them, but I was the exact opposite in high school. And I would have loved a story that was about a girl like kicking butt, but she was kind of shy and kind of didn't know what she was doing. And she was trying to make amends with her family and discover that she's queer, and like, who is she? And like has this power that's not really a power. It's more like a destructive force of nature. I love those sorts of stories with girls wrestling with powers. I've loved Sailor Moon since forever. And I was like, I want to do my version of that, but I would have loved to have been about ghosts and fighting demons, and it just gets bigger into a family drama sort of thing. Like, and I wanted to show women empowering other women. Like, I don't want to spoil the end of Jennifer Strange, but the next book is all about women empowering other women, like generationally. I won't say why, but I'm very excited about that, like where it's all going to lead to, because it is all about family and how family handles you and shapes you, whether good or bad. About hereditary curses, I feel like I'm fighting a hereditary curse by having heart failure. So it was a great outlet for me to deal with that frustration that I'm cursed with something I can't do anything about that's actively destroying me. And it was like, I want that to be this story to be this gateway between the middle schoolers who are interested in reading horror, reading darker, and want to start reading YA, but they might not be ready for any, like the upper teen or sort of like the college question. I wanted to keep it in the, I don't know how to drive yet. I just have a learner's permit, and keep it in those complicated problems, because I thought that would be interesting to me, because that was so rough. Like I felt like I'm about to have all this, like I should have all this power and all this freedom, and I can't quite have it yet at 15, 16. I can't, I'm almost there. And once you have it, it's actually kind of nerve-wracking to have it and have the responsibility. So I wanted to write about that age with Jennifer for that reason.
That's awesome. I feel like if you're a horror fan, like most of us started reading King way too early, or I read V.C. Andrews, which is something else. Yeah. In the 6th grade, you go through all the Goosebumps, the Christopher Pikes, all that, and you're like, what am I left with? Oh, I guess I have to read these adult books I probably shouldn't be reading in the 6th grade. But I'm glad all of you are writing for the audience that works, if it works for them differently than it maybe did for us. So it is awesome. So much about horror and suspense is how you're feeling while you're reading it, right? It's not just the words on the page, but it's how you can make an audience feel. So let's talk a little bit about world building. So many of your stories are set either in a contemporary or a historical world rather than a fantasy world. What went into crafting those worlds and bringing them to life?
I can go. Go ahead, Amy.
Sorry. I thought what stuck out to me right away was my first novel, Daughters Unto Devils, takes place on a prairie mostly. And I knew I ended up writing the plot around one of the most climactic scenes. It has to do with fire ants, if you've read Daughters. And it's a very straight up big horror scene. So I knew that everything, once it got to that point, there was going to be no going back as far as the horror elements were concerned. And it happens not at the end, but towards the end-ish. So I knew there needed to be something else to hold the creep factor on the way there. And I mean, the prairie lent itself for that so well. I remember feeling like it was its own character, just the isolation of it, the visuals of it. She sees a dead baby standing in the prairie grasses in the night. And it's funny because so many people point out that scene.
No, it's not funny at all. No, it was horrible.
I added that thinking, is this too cheesy or is this not right? But a lot of people have ended up saying that part creeped them out one of the most. So I mean, that prairie felt like its own character to me, and I think it definitely lended to the creepy atmosphere before I was able to just unleash the horror elements completely.
I love that you're like, how do I make a big fire ant scene more terrifying? Oh, creepy dead babies.
Yeah. So just a casual dead baby.
Her editor is a friend of mine, and I remember when he offered for her book, because he texted me and said, I'm reading this unbelievable book. You need to read this book. There's a fire ant baby scene. That was literally the text, okay? So, and I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, no, you don't understand. There's a fire ant baby scene. And it was like, all right.
I felt so evil. It was fun. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie.
I like how you're like, yeah, I should feel bad, but I just don't.
Yeah, pretty much.
I love what you said, Amy, about seeing the setting as a character, because I totally see settings as characters. Like, you know, people do character development sheets and all this character development work, and I do that in terms of setting. So I'll like interview my setting and think about my setting and give my setting a personality and give my setting a secret and give my setting a thing that it wants most and a thing that it's not telling anyone. So I totally do that. And I did that with, yeah. And I love it. And I'll get out my notebook and I'll like interview it in my head and I'll hear my setting's voice and it'll start telling me things. And my books are primarily set in the woods of Vermont, and the Invited is no different. It's set in the woods of Vermont, but there's a creepy bog, which is like a swamp. And I ended up visiting a lot of bogs of Vermont because I had never been to a bog before. And because I needed a reason for these characters to buy this land for really cheap. And I was like, well, it's wetlands. It's wetland that they can't really build on most of. Oh, I'll make it a bog. There are bogs in Vermont. And now I'm going to go on all these bog field trips. And bogs are so freaking cool. If you've never been to a bog, go to a bog. It's this otherworldly landscape and there are carnivorous plants. Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool.
Find a bog immediately.
I too am also fascinated with bogs and inserted a bog in the second Mary book because I found out about bog mummies and I researched everything I could about bog mummies. And I was like, I need to have an excuse to write about a bog mummy. So like Amy's fire ant scene was my bog mummy for the second Mary book. I was like, I need to put a bog body in here. It's been here for a while and totally preserved. So,
I love it. Yeah, when I was in Dublin, I remember seeing a bog body. I went to a museum and they had an actual bog body and it was the coolest thing. If you ever get a chance to see an actual bog body, it's very cool.
We are some macabre broads.
I know.
I love that we're all excited about bog bodies.
Like legitimately
everything we need to know about this.
Must see a bog body immediately.
So I think, Jennifer, you were talking, and it also, I think that's particularly important with haunted house stories, that you know the motivation of that setting and what it's trying to accomplish by torturing the crap out of your characters. Like there's a, Havisham House, if you read Great Expectations, Satis House is a big deal because it's the finest house in the area, which is kind of funny when you do the research behind that and you find out that Satis House really meant just satisfactory house. But because everything else was such a crap hole that like all of a sudden that's a big deal, but like for me, setting is actually very much secondary. I go with my monster first, whatever the monster is. I want to know my monster. That's why Mary became very much the driving force of what happened to her is why she does horror on others. So with my Mary trilogy, or my duology, it was only 2. With my Mary duology, basically I went back to what I knew. And when I was in middle school, my middle school completely like shut itself down when the Bloody Mary urban legend hit, except they had a local version of it called Mary Jane. And it was because the school in our town burnt down in the 1950s. And no one actually got hurt, but legends are as legends are. And when the school burnt down in 1950, of course, a girl got caught in the bathroom and died in the bathroom at the fire in the 50s. So the kids that were in the school that was built on top of where that old school was, had Mary Jane, I believe in you, Mary Jane, and your golden blood. And then they would shut the lights off in the bathroom, scratch each other on the face, and then run out and scream down the halls. Like, I'm not exaggerating. This is people wonder why I'm weird. It was my formative years, but like, that's what would happen. So when I went to go write that book, I went to exactly where I am, which is a small town right smack dab in the middle of the Hockomock Swamp, which is considered one of the most haunted places in New England. Hockomock means where spirits dwell in Wampanoag. And so I basically just set it with where I knew, what I grew up with, what I could explain for familiarity. And then, for me, setting is usually the last thing, not on purpose. It's usually just not my thing yet. But I feel like a haunted house story, that would almost be imperative. So that's just me.
Cat, you're up. And you had like multiple things to talk about with setting, right? Because you set your story in pretty creepy place. So
I did. I was just thinking the thing I thought about most was like not where it was set at all, because I didn't know where I wanted it set. It was about Jennifer's power. And I knew what I wanted her to do, but I wanted there to be a cost to that power, which is why every time she crosses something over, something must be put back and part of her body is taken. And the mark grows every time she touches a ghost or a demon. And I went, where can I give her the biggest amount of this problem as possible? And I was like, I need to find a haunted city. And I had some really good dear friends who I met at my first ever writers conference, Megan and Steve Gerard, and they lived in Savannah, Georgia, and they agreed to give me kind of a tour around and like a locals tour, which was amazing because it was pretty much every single ghost tour condensed into one walking tour because they knew all of them by heart. So they told me everything about the city. I realized this is the perfect place to set my book. I was thinking it was, but I knew nothing about Savannah, even though I grew up in Atlanta. I'd never been there. I was like, I need to figure out a way to put it in this city. And I based it around real landmarks around Savannah College of Art and Design because I had a lot of friends who went to SCAD. So it was very easy to know what it was like to actually attend school there. So while Liz is a student, I knew what she was going to be going through, like very rigorous college courses. And suddenly her sister's her roommate and she's supposed to be going to high school. And being an older sister, I know what kind of problem that would be. And then from there, I went into more research about the city and about the biggest part to me wasn't Savannah, it was the family. Because I don't want to spoil anything. I'll just say that, like for book 2 and 3, but Marcus's family is very tied. There's a lot of webs there. And I don't want to say what like, just in case anyone who's watching hasn't gotten their book in the mail and read it, but Marcus doesn't know something about his family lineage that he's going to find out in book 2, and it's massive, and it's part of why he suddenly has an ability at the end of book 1. And he'll get to know where that comes from and where his power comes from, because the entire time, I'd say even more than the city of Savannah, Marcus is the antagonist of Jennifer, because he's like, there's this girl with this power, she's stumbling through my city, unleashing all kinds of hell and killing everybody in the process. And I wanted to know, okay, what are their two families' history? Because they've been at war for a long time. And I decided I'm going to plan all of this out like a family saga. That was way more important to me than putting in Savannah. Savannah was going to be the antagonist, but the biggest point to me was I got to figure out these people's pasts, because I'm very interested in long-standing family feuds that are at war over this question about ghosts that has always interested me. Like, on both sides of the coin of ghost hunting, there's like people who think, okay, you're exploiting the people who think they've seen ghosts for money, or there's people who want to help people deal with their loved ones and help them cross over. And I'm like, what would it look like if these two things were at war in terms of families? Like, they're both, one's kind of in it for profit, one's in it to help people. I was like, it'd be really interesting if the one who was in it to help people had a really bad power. It was completely not helping things at all. So I'm really excited about revealing Jacob's family, Jennifer's dad's family, because certain events at the very end of the book will kind of ignite his family and how they respond to it in book 2. And I had to figure out, what does his family look like to write this journal where Jacob is writing about his past the entire time and Jennifer's trying to figure it out. And she never really does, but she's not going to till she meets them. So it's going to be really cool. I just have all these ideas. It's just like, it's all based around family, like how families work and how weird they are also.
Creepy legacies are so good. They're so good. Like, I'm getting Mayfair witches type of thing here. So I'm like,
yes. I'm wanting it. So I've been pitching it as like Practical Magic meets Knives Out. That's book 2. I'm so excited.
Very nice. Very nice. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I loved so much about Jennifer Strange, but one of the things I loved was your use of the journals and just how you incorporated the history and the parents' backstory into the book. And the journal, because the way you did the journals, it felt like actually reading a journal, and it was so cool. And seeing the sigils and reading about the magic, and just, it was wonderful. I felt completely immersed in the world.
I'm going to do a different journal each book. So book 2 is Miriam's journal.
Nice.
Very cool.
So you're going to find out how she became the matriarch of this ghost hunting Blackwell family, and how she dealt in haunted antiques how she fell in love with Arturo, who was kind of like sleeping around with everybody, but she's still in love with him. Like, it's a very monstrous love. Like, I love the same idea that you do about Crimson Peak, Hillary. Like, I wanted to do something gothic romantic. Like, she's in love with this guy who's swindling people using ghosts for money. But what is her past? I think, like, everyone loves Jennifer or Liz or Marcus. And my favorite's Miriam, because I know I'm going to reveal about her. I really want her to be the dark horse favorite later.
Here's the thing.
I think it's going to happen.
Here's the thing. So figure out the character in the book you gave 2 lines to, and then that's going to be somebody's favorite. You're going to be like, why? Why are you? I mentioned you for a paragraph and a half. You were at a gas station and you drank a Pepsi. Why? So don't worry. Someone will love your baby, even if it's not the primary baby, because somebody will also love gas station Pepsi guy. So he needs his own book.
Yeah. As I say, is he coming back?
That's very wise advice. I'll probably hear that.
Now I got to go find that character.
It's particularly true if you write romance. If he gets 2 lines, obviously he's getting an entire book later on.
A sub-series, right? That's usually how it works in romance. So I'm going to let the audience know now is the time for you to start percolating your questions and getting them up. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience. And this is your chance to win that amazing prize pack. So start thinking of those questions. I'm curious from all of you, what is one element that you go out of your way to include in all your stories? Could be a thing, it could be a person, could be a trope, whatever it might be.
I like assigning some sort of unlikable trait to my female characters. I don't know why. I think that's what I like to read the most. So I always I don't shy away from having them have some like maybe gnarlier personality qualities.
Mine is girls doing it for themselves. I have a really hard time with the damsel in distress trope personally. And that's funny because, saying that, I'm not saying I don't want a relationship in the book. But if there's a relationship, I still want the primary focus to be on the development beyond the relationship. Like, we write horror. If Michael Myers is chasing you through the house, you are not going to stop and have a 16-page diatribe about how you feel having just made out with somebody in the closet. So I want these characters to be emboldened by their relationships to men, but not defined by them. That's a big one for me. You can have partnerships that absolutely help or hinder a protagonist along the way. And if I have a relationship in the book, I don't want it to be a superfluous one so that there is rescuing later. I want it to be a thing that is part of the natural development and part of the actual story for the character. So that's mine.
I've usually got, even though I write books for adults, I've usually got a kid or a young adult character, and it's always an outsider, quirky, misfit girl. And I've tried to leave her out of some of my stories, but she comes creeping in. In The Invited, I was just writing the story of Helen and Nate, and I felt like something was missing until one day I started writing, and I was all of a sudden writing from the point of view of someone spying on them from high up in a tree. And it was the neighbor girl, Olive, who's watching them, and she wants them to go away because she's got secrets of her own and she knows they shouldn't be here. So that's something that I keep going back to again and again, and they keep popping into my books whether I want them to or not. And for whatever reason, I feel like I have a much easier time writing that point of view and that voice than most of my adult characters. So maybe I should be writing young adult books, y'all. I don't know.
Join us.
So I started laughing because the thing I'm like, that's my thing, is I want to pit girls against gross monsters. That's my thing.
Yes.
I love Evil Dead. I love Army of Darkness. And I would watch that like, why isn't the girl getting to do that? Like, I want the girl doing that. But then, oh no, it explodes all over and she's got to deal with her makeup and everything else. And I want the girls kicking butt and the monster explodes. Like, I want to show them like dealing with something so nasty they throw up, like some actual reactions. And like, I want to see that so much. Yeah. I want girls like dealing with body horror, dealing with gross monsters, like something like I normally see the guys doing it. He's taking care of it. Well, I want the girl to take care of it. That's what I want to do.
Well, you nailed that in Jennifer Strange completely.
Thank you. I was hoping so.
For sure.
It's funny you say that, Kat, because like if I think about putting myself into a horror scenario as a pretty prissy person, I'm like, I would be horrified to be covered in muck because I would totally be worrying about my hair and my face and my shoes. So I totally get that. So thank you for writing for those of us that are high maintenance.
I think my favorite moment in Jennifer Strange is the poltergeist, not the possession scene, but the scene where Liz is fighting the poltergeist and it's gross and it's mucky and it's getting all over her. And Jennifer is trying to tell her, no, you can do it. You have the power. You can like banish this thing. And she's like, no, I can't. No, I can't. No. I feel like that's how I'd realistically react. And then I would realize I could do it, I wanted to show what two sisters would be like in that situation where this thing's disgusting.
See, can and want are two different things.
Exactly, they're two different things.
The motivation there. So we've got some questions from the audience. So the first one is from Tony Jones. Can you give some examples of YA horror novels from earlier decades that you think have aged particularly well?
Tony from Ginger Nuts of Horror.
Oh,
he reviews all the YA books. Hi, Tony.
I wouldn't be able to say I've reread it anytime recently, but when I was a teenager, I loved the Cheerleaders series by R.L. Stine. There was the first evil, the second evil, and the third evil. Right? Is that the titles? But then there was also a series that he did. I think it was like 99 Fear Street House of Horror or something. That one might have been First Evil, Second Evil. I don't know. But both of those series I thought were really strong, but I haven't read them recently enough to speak to them now, but I'm sure the nostalgia would get me regardless. So
I feel like I was a Christopher Pike kid. Like everything. It Slumber Party, give it to me. And I reread them later and they are so wonderfully awful in exactly the way you want them to be. Like if you go into them understanding that they are effectively horror camp, I think you're going to be fine. But if you go in expecting, like a Shirley Jackson-esque atmospheric, no, this is throw your friends off a cliff and then whodunit, I feel like they're fun though. I feel like I would still recommend a lot of them to kids today, but I also feel like looking back, it's kind of a cool question because when I look back to, I don't remember a whole ton of YA horror or young adult horror or children's lit at that bracket because I really did jump from Pike to King. Like there was no in the middle for me. So it's a cool question, but it's a hard question to answer for me because I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of gateway stuff at that point in time. I kind of think you went full throttle into it or you were out, And I mean, Stein came right after because I'm a little older than you. So Stein came out as I was just a little bit too old for Goosebumps and some of that early stuff. So I went back and read it later, but I'm talking like in my 30s, but that wasn't for me. For developmentally, I was a Stephen King kid and an Anne Rice kid. I read the crap out of Anne Rice. I went through a phase where I think that's all I read for about a year. So
Christopher Pike has
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I was just going to say, and I've seen people talk about this a little bit and debate about it as to whether Carrie would be marketed as young adult today. I don't know the answer, but I think it's interesting to think
it could be. I think it could go either way. Because I don't feel like the language is YA, but the teenage trauma angle definitely is relevant. Like
the coming of age stuff.
Who the hell is ever going to forget the period trauma?
Yeah.
Like, there's such a cruelty to that. And that a lot of kids that were bullied, that's going to resonate with them. So I feel like it could go either way. But the problem is I also feel like just because it's a 17-year-old kid as the protag doesn't necessarily mean that it's young adult.
Yeah.
So I'm old. I was a child of the 70s, and I went from Nancy Drew to Stephen King, just stealing books from my mom's bookshelf. So I missed all the Christopher Pike. I missed all the fun stuff, and Goosebumps. When did Goosebumps start? That I feel like that came later, definitely.
That came when I was in the
1990s.
That was my generation.
I was too old for that then. My daughter got into Goosebumps, but
I just missed it.
Yeah. So
Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark holds up today. Hardcore. That's more middle grade, but I mean, it never fails to amaze between Stephen Gamel's illustrations and just the very cold language, like the very straightforward language used. Love it.
Didn't pull punches.
Yeah.
It didn't pull any punches.
Right.
And
very straightforward. Like this person's dead, you know?
Yeah.
Kat, do you have recommendations?
Yes. So I did grow up in the Goosebumps era, but I wasn't allowed to read them. I snuck them from my classmates. My mom was still not a horror person, and I don't know how she's going to read my book, but props to her if she tries. Like I read Bunnicula, and that was my gateway. Like I loved that book, and I didn't know there were things like that. And I think from there I went to, I'm probably remembering the name wrong, but Bailey School Kids. What was that called? Is the series where my teacher's a vampire, my gym coach is a alien.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I went to those, and then I found this very tiny micro YA section that was maybe a shelf because it didn't exist until I think I was in college. Then we had a YA section when I was a bookseller, so I didn't even grow up with this. But I found Paul Zindel, like Locke, Doomstone, I think, and then the Reef.
Big Man?
Yes.
I remember that one.
I didn't know there could be a thing where there was a Loch Ness monster in Vermont, and there were intestines caught in the propellers. There was a severed head. There was all this great stuff, and it's really middle grade horror, but it's kind of young YA because it's pretty gross. Like it's pretty hardcore gross. And I went, I want to do that. I want that job. I have had to track down those books. Like I think I found them in a dollar bin, and I lucked into finding them. So I'd love for his books to have a comeback, because I think there's lots of kids that would read it. Lots of like middle graders going into YA, that kind of in between, they would love those books. I ate them up, and I still reread them. I think they totally hold up.
I would just add Lois Duncan to all of that. If you never read Lois Duncan, that it absolutely holds up. I Knew What You Did Last Summer, all of that. Yep. So I would absolutely add Lois Duncan to that. Mary Hart asks, who is the character you've written that you most relate to?
I'm going to go with Beth Ann from The Hollow Girl. So The Hollow Girl is not a book for everyone, and I knew it when I wrote it. There's going to be people that absolutely love it and absolutely hate it. But Beth Ann was basically an autobiographical journey of me dealing with the disassociation that happened to me after my sexual assault. So that whole book is about dealing with trauma post-sexual assault and feeling. It was a therapeutic exercise in not feeling powerless after being forced to feel powerless. So for me, it's an easy question. I mean, she's also, Ramani Didikoi, which I am. She's not me, but it's a weird thing to look back at an event like that shapes you as a person, and still be angry at a powerlessness years and years and years later. And I mean, that never really leaves you. The Hollow Girl is a book that does not resonate to people unless they have really been in that powerless situation. And the people who don't like it, I'm assuming they haven't been sexual assault victims, but the letters I've gotten from assault victims about that book, it was a highly personal book. And it was a highly personal book that was, I'm mad at how powerless this event that was terrible in my life made me feel. Now let's go, cut the body parts off of some people who screwed with me, type of thing. And that, seriously, it was an exercise in moving past disassociation to embracing anger and ultimately winning the day. So that was, for me, that one. Sorry to bring the tone down.
No,
I thought that was
very
wonderful.
thoughtful. Yeah. The character I probably relate to the most would be June from Nightingale. Some things about her are very not like me, but other things very much are similar, but not the same to what Hillary was speaking about, being in a position where you feel like power was taken away from you. I think the alien abduction and all the processing she goes through, it all boils down to her dealing with past trauma. Another thing I identified with June with is she wants to do what she wants to do, whether that's the normal thing, the thing she should be doing, the thing that everyone in her life thinks she should be doing. She has her own feelings and desires and is going to do those no matter how it makes other people look at her.
And clearly you thought your parents were fake at some point, right?
I never woke up one day and thought that my parents were replaced by duplicates. That is actually a real illness, though. That would be terrifying to experience.
Kat and Jennifer?
Oh, who do I relate to most? The hard question. I try so hard not to. I was going to say, I would probably go with one of the quirky outsider girls, just because they're voices that come easily to me. Olive, going way back, my very first quirky outsider girl I wrote about in my first book, Promise Not to Tell, Dell Griswold, who is probably the favorite character. Everyone asks, what's your favorite book? Who's your favorite character you've ever done? And my favorite character is just Dell, because she's the one who started everything for me. And she was my little ghost girl in my first book, Promise Not to Tell. And she's the one who showed me that I'm drawn to writing about quirky outsider girls who sometimes, who have bad things happen to them and see things that maybe they shouldn't, and have secret lives and carry secrets. Yeah, so.
That book is so good, by the way. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Kat, do you have one?
Jennifer's probably my most personal book. Jennifer was so close to home. I had to make her pizza the exact opposite flavor of what I like so that I could distance myself from her. She was the hardest to edit for that reason. I mean, it was very much about my 9th grade year. I wasn't being attacked by ghosts or anything, but I was dealing with being queer in the South, and that was very hard to deal with. Without going into too much detail, it was horrible. So I wanted to write about that painful year of my life and talk about it through horror, because horror is so liberating to talk about these things. And sometimes you're able to process it better through ghosts and demons and punching them, I guess. So I felt like this was my outlet to finally do that and heal and feel a lot better. And now I think I have other characters and books I've written after Jennifer, because while I was waiting for it to get published, I wrote 2 other books. I relate to them, but not as deeply as Jennifer. Jennifer is about a time and place in my life, and about who I used to be, and how I went from this shy girl to being much more empowered and self-confident and able to see that being queer is okay, being who I am is okay, and being more open about that, because I have never talked about it. When I lived in the South, I never talked about it. I didn't until I moved up north 2 years ago. So it's been really the hardest thing to ever write, because it's almost like a coming out book for me. And it doesn't even have that much queer narrative in it, but it will through the whole series. So that was about embracing that part about myself.
Thanks for sharing. I'm going to ask one last question, and then there's one specifically for Kat. It's a writer question for all of you from Douglas Wynn. What are some challenges you've encountered when writing younger characters? And do you rely on younger people in your life to get the details right, since things are so different now than they were before?
I don't think I never need to ask someone younger. Mostly I just try to remember that I just remember the feelings I had at that time in my life. So it's really a lot more about the feelings you're conveying that people relate to help make any character authentic, no matter what their age is. So I personally have not had issues writing younger characters for that reason.
My stepkid is just turned 18, and his friends invade my house for D&D twice a week. So I'll sit in the living room and I'll listen to the little bastards downstairs for like hours. And that was, to be honest, it's great. I avoid, for obvious reasons, I avoid like slang and stuff because it's so temporary. But like, it's great to see the thresholds the kids have, because there is a lot of pro clutching in young adult in particular that you have to deal with when it comes to topics of swearing, drugs, sex, or any contentious issue book thing. But then if you just actually listen to those kids, because those kids have been in my basement playing D&D for 3 or 4 years, kids can handle us so much more than most of us give them credit for. And the stuff they say is way more heinous than anything I would put in a horror book. So,
right?
But it's also liberating to hear that. It's very liberating to have teenagers around, not for fodder or character fodder or anything, but just to know where their heads are. I mean, the thing that's freaking phenomenal is how amazingly aware teenagers today are because of the internet, because of their Gen Z, because they're political and they're active and they're aware. And it's like listening to them. And I'm like, God, we were arguing about whether Sprite was better than Mountain Dew. And these kids are, talking about gender equality, the gender spectrum, Black Lives Matter, right down the line. And it's like, it is a perennial reminder. Do not underestimate young people. I mean, they'll also like play the fart game afterwards, so they totally ruin it. But I mean, like, for a minute, I think it's nice for me to have that constant reminder of what they're capable of handling.
That was well said.
That's awesome. For me, when I'm writing young characters, I'm relying on my own memory and my own experiences. But that said, I do have a 16-year-old daughter, and pre-pandemic, our house was full of teenagers all the time. And I totally agree with what you said, Hillary. On the days that I feel most discouraged and disgusted with the world and feel like there's no hope and I don't even want to get out of bed, I just look at everything my daughter and her friends are doing and the stuff they care about and how impassioned they are about changing the world and, like fixing the planet and fixing everything that's wrong. And they're going to do it. They're going to do it. And so that gives me hope. That gives me a reason to get out of bed and feel like there's hope. And they do tell great stories. And there's nothing like taking a group of teenage girls to a supposedly haunted covered bridge in Vermont, let me tell you.
Oh my God.
So I take them on little field trips and haunted outings and cemeteries. And I like to tell them scary stories. We were just camping with my daughter's best friend. And I had so much fun terrifying them with scary stories around the campfire. And then like going through the woods and making scary noises behind them. And it's great.
I don't know if you've encountered this to the degree. I don't know if you've encountered this to the degree that I have, but it's really, really funny to see the urban legend tropes, the stories that made it around when we were kids, reimagined and
Oh yeah. Oh, I think Hillary froze. Hillary froze. You froze, Hillary.
Well, until Hillary comes back, Kat, do you want to share?
Yeah. So remind me the question, because I was really into what Hillary was saying.
How do you get young characters right? Basically, is what it comes down to.
Right. So 2 reasons. The first is that I was a bookseller at Barnes & Noble in the young adult section. I dealt with summer reading. I dealt with reading lists. I dealt with parents and and hand selling young adult and middle grade and picture books. And I saw what went into the process over and over again of how it's a joint process that the parents are usually buying with their teen, their teen children, or they might only have so much money. So I saw what that looked like, and I really got a sense for what goes into the stories they're interested in. And I remember what it feels like. I think that's a large part of it. Like Amy was saying, I remember the feeling, and that feeling is very universal, and everything is heightened. I feel like I should know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't want anyone to know that.
Yeah.
And yay, Hillary's back.
I'm on my cell phone now because I apparently didn't update my laptop forever. I'm the best.
Oh no.
So I'm on my cell phone. Sorry.
It's all good. It's all good. Did you want to finish your answer?
No, I mean, you got the gist of it, I think, which is, sorry.
It's all good. You're good.
You're good.
So last question is specifically for Cat from Stephen Cord. So we know there's a sequel in the works. How many books are ultimately in the Strange saga, not including the Pepsi Guy spinoff series, which we're clearly interested in?
So 3, but we might be doing some mini additions, some mini comics. I'm writing one that takes place between book 1 and book 2 right now. It's going to be about Marcus. So I'm going to see how that pans out. I'm hoping that works out, but if not, they might just go in book 2. But for right now, there's 3 books, and I know the title of the second one, and it's Jennifer Strange and the Red Gate. I'm very excited.
Yay! Oh man, I cannot wait. I really cannot wait, honestly.
Really?
Yes.
It's just so weird. Like, my heroes are telling me they like my book, and I'm like, I don't know how to handle this. Like,
no, like I will tell you, I opened Jennifer Strange at a very inconvenient time to start reading, but I just wanted to see, the intro, what it felt like. I was excited to see that. And I could not put it down until I finished it. And it was just incredible. Like, all the influences that you talk about inspiring you, I can see them. It was very like feminist Sam Raimi type of stuff,
Yeah,
amazing Buffy vibes. Yes. So Buffy with a dollop of Drag Me to Hell.
Yes. Oh God, I love Drag Me to Hell. I mean, in terms of, it's almost like Looney Tunes horror. That's always been the thing I like about Army of Darkness. I was I grew up on Looney Tunes and wanting to be an animator, and I went, horror can be like this. It can be funny. What?
I love that
immediately. So thank you for everything you just said. I'm gonna cry. Thank you.
Oh my gosh! Of course, it's the truth. It's the truth.
Well, I know.
Oh, go ahead, Jennifer.
I was just going to tell you, I was going to say what I told you, Kat, privately, that Jennifer Strange arrived to me when I couldn't read anything. It was I kept picking things up and I just couldn't get hooked. I had no attention span. I was on pandemic overload, unhappy with everything. And I got completely, like Amy, I got completely hooked in and I couldn't put it down. And it got me reading again. And not only that, it got me excited about reading and excited about the characters. And I need to know what happens next. Get on that, Cat. I want that sequel.
I am going to start crying. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh.
Well, and until you have that sequel, we'll take the comic. That works totally fine too.
Yeah.
I love comic tie-ins to books, and you're the perfect person for that, since you have pieces of illustrations within your novel. So we have the winner of the giveaway to announce, which is very exciting. And Kat, you'll have to tell our winner where to go to eat, maybe to email you. And all that. And then at the end, tell us how to get your book, where to get your book, and all of that. So the winner of the giveaway is Douglas Wynn. So thank you for asking your question. Yay, it's very exciting. Tell Douglas where to go to get their prize pack.
So Doug knows me. He can just Facebook message me, or if he wants to, he can email me at jenniferstrangepreorders@gmail.com, because that's how I'm keeping track of everyone I'm mailing prizes to, because my inbox is so full. So jenniferstrangepreorders@gmail.com is perfect. Or just message me, Doug, because we're Facebook friends.
That is awesome. Speaking of pre-orders, are you still accepting receipts for people who are ordering the book to get some of those amazing prizes?
So I ran out of the first round, but I'm not out of the holographic book plates. So I have these holographic book plates of the hands from Jennifer, the cover. So if people want their books signed when they do finally arrive, you can also use the same email, reach out to me, or if you don't remember, you can just ask me on Twitter. I'm at Cat M Scully. And I should have another batch coming in of some of the pre-order swag. So I'll announce that when they come in. and let everybody know. But if you are like, I really want one, you can always email me at Jennifer Strange Pre-orders, and I can let you know when I'm getting the next batch. Because I did ask for more. I went to Geekify and said, I ran out of enamel pins and patches. I had so many people ask. So they're sending me another box. I will let everyone know when that comes in. But in the meantime, you can email your receipts of your proof of purchase or library request if you don't have the money to buy the book. Libraries are perfect, great ways to go get the book. I totally don't mind. You can get it from your local library if you just want to give it a try, and send the proof of library request to jenniferstrangepreorders@gmail.com.
Great. Well, Cat, welcome as a debut author to the world. And thank you for sharing Jennifer Strange with all of us. And thank you to all of you for being here and supporting Cat along the way. Is there anything you want to say at the end, Cat?
I just want to thank everybody who wanted to do this with me today. Like, all of you mean a lot to me. Like, Christy has been a huge cheerleader too. I didn't bring this up earlier, but Christy has been a huge cheerleader behind the scenes of Jennifer. She's been like reposting everything I post. So I was really excited she wanted to moderate this. I'm really happy Hillary came, because I wouldn't be here without her. I went through a lot to get through the book, and she referred me to her agent, who's now my agent. She's wonderful. And she's just always had my back. And it's like I said earlier, she's really taught me to be brave. And I'm so happy she's able to make it. And I can't thank Jennifer and Amy enough for coming too. Like, I knew how much it would mean to Amy to meet Jennifer. And I've been friends with Jennifer for a while. I've met her a couple times, and we hit it off like so perfectly. We had a blast. And I was like, oh man, I gotta get away for them to meet. And I wanted this to be not necessarily about my day, but about celebrating women in horror and the women that I know that really work to inspire others, especially other women and female identifying creators that are coming in and want to do this too. And I feel like you all do so much. And I'm so happy you're here with me today. Thank you. And thank you to everyone.
We are lucky to know you.
Thank you.
We are lucky to know and love you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, if you haven't had a chance to read the comments, I highly recommend that you go and do that. There's some nice things about all of you in there. And Kat, enjoy the rest of your debut year. It's really exciting. So.
Thank you. It's really funny because now it's okay, time to get back to work. It's like everything changed and nothing did. I gotta go right now.
Yeah.
All of us want that from you, so please do.
Yeah. Maybe when the second book comes out, we can all do this in person. Wouldn't that be
Yes.
cool?
I would love that so much.
Yes, we need to get Amy up here to New England.
I know.
Yes.
It's like all the cool people live over there. We got some cool people over here, but I mean, like, I really love it over there. When I got to visit Hillary in like Massachusetts, that was so fun.
Where all the spooky stuff apparently happens in the bogs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I need to see a bog body.
We could call it the bog tour.
The bog.
We're gonna have a bog book tour.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining. We'll see you later.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.